Hi there, this is Phil with PhilFX, and this is the second UV tutorial that I am doing today. I covered some of the, briefly, some of the more common tools you use when you're doing UV edits, and on this part I want to talk more about doing a little more complicated UV mapping. And so we're going to look at UV mapping this part of our ray gun here, and what I'm going to start off with is we're going to UV map one of these tubes that are going across here, and so let's go ahead and get started here. So the way, again, I always say that when you're doing UV mapping, it's a divide and conquer approach, and so this is no different. And so what I'd want to do when I UV map this is start with a shape that is somewhat common, and in this case these tubes are highly cylindrical, so I want to do a cylindrical projection across this tube. And the best way to start to do that is let's make a selection group. So the easiest way is we'll go in here and get this front view, and we go into face mode, and so I would go in and I would select these faces. And let's go back into my view here, and I just go through and I'm going to select just the faces that are on this tube. And so I didn't have camera-based selection on, so I got all those faces there, and I hold down shift and I just go through and I add the rest of these faces. And so I would select these through and select the faces here and select the rest of the faces in the back. And as I said before, you want to be sure and make selection sets when you do this. And in fact, actually, I've already done this, so we can save some time here on this tutorial. Let's just go ahead and grab one of those selection sets. So I'm going to click off here, and if I go up here to select left body tube and I say select the set members, you can see that we select those sets right there. And then the next thing we want to do is go in and we want to do a UV projection on that. So what kind of UV projection? Well, I said this is very cylindrical, so we want to do a cylindrical projection. So I go in here and I grab this, and I'm going to create a new UV set for this. So I'm going to click here and say create new UV set, and it's going to go into UV set 1, and we're going to project. And we get our projection tool, and like always, Maya doesn't know exactly how the cylinder is facing, and so we have to help it out. And so the first thing we need to do is close the cylinder. So we grab the red tab and I close that, and then I go in here and I hit the little T for the so I can get the gizmo for the universal manipulator, and we want to rotate this, so I click on the circle, and now I get my gizmo so I can change the rotation on this, and I start to move this up, and we can see we're moving it in X. So actually I'm just going to do this full 90, and I get that 90 degrees that way. And so we look into here, and I need to scale this, so I click one of the scale boxes, and I can shrink this down just a little bit, and we can scale this out. And we want to scale this out so it pretty much covers the entire range of the cylinder. So you can see that we do that, and we've got enough diameter that we're covering everything, and so that's our projection. So we've successfully projected that surface. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like in the UV editor. So I call up the UV editor, and there we go. That's our projection. And we can see what that looks like here. And so it's a little bit strange. We've got some circles here, and we've got some things tied around, and so what we want to do is see if we can't work with this and make this just a little bit better. All right, so we go in and I'll drop this, and so here's our UV projection. And so one of the first things I want to do right off the bat is I probably want to go in and I want to break this seam right here. All right, so we want to cut right down this seam, because what I want to do is take these UVs here and paste them over into this side. So I'm going to go in and we'll get our knife tool, and I'm going to cut and I'm going to drag this right down here, and I'm going to cut that right through. And we have a few problems in that there's a few things that probably aren't where we want. So let's go in and see if we can't fix this out here. So I'll select UVs, get that UV, and let's move this here. So we see, so we actually want to cut right down that face. So let me get my knife tool, and we cut down that face, and that splits that. And let's see if we actually haven't cut this successfully now. So let me go in and UV, select that one, command click, right click over here, say to shell. Yes, we have. Okay, so you can see I've successfully cut that off, and we want to take that piece, hit the W key, and I'll move this over just a little bit. And what we want to do is I really want to take this and map this over to this side. So what we want to do is go in, and I want to select edges, and we want to sew the edges together that are common. And let me hold down shift, and let me grab these edges on the inside, and I don't want this edge here, so let me deselect that. Okay, so that's looking good. So you can see we got these edges over here, and I've got these edges over here. And so what I want to do is I want to move and sew this and place this over here. So the best way to do that is we go up to polygons, go down here to move and sew edges, and we go boom. And we move and sew them together, and lo and behold, we have this whole thing. And so now this is starting to look like something. All right, and so we can go in and scale this just a little bit. Let me scale this down, and let's go ahead and take a look at this, and let's see what the UV mapping looks like right off, and see where we're at. Okay, so here's our cylinder on the side, and this is a little bit strange. And when we get to these edges, wow, you can see we've got quite a bit of distortion going on these ends here. All right, and we go over here, and we got quite a bit of distortion going on over here. That's not going to work. So what can we do? Well, one of the first things you want to look at is, let's take a look and see where our seams are. Well, remember I said you want to put your seams where they're not going to be seen. And where's this seam? Well, this seam is right on the outside. See that? Where we have the dark area here and the light area over here. This is why when you get this checkerboard mapping in Maya over here, they have a dark color over here and a lighter color over here. The reason for that is that so it highlights these seams. And so the seams, right off the bat, you can see this is in a bad place. If I could have my preference, what I would prefer is I'd like to have the seams be on the inside, right in here, where I don't see them, and have the outside be a more universal mapping. So I think what we want to do is do a cut and sew one more time and see if we can't do a little bit better in terms of our mapping. The other thing is if I go in here, let's turn this off. let's look at our shading and see what our overlaps are. Oh, we see we've got some problems here. And we've got some overlaps on our UVs. And so right off the bat, we can see that we do have some issues here. And one of the things that we can do to fix that is I can go in and we grab this whole shape and we go to unfold. And we can try and do some unfolding, and let's see how that works on that. Excuse me, no, I have to select the UVs. So let's go and select the UVs, and we go up, go down to our unfold tool, and this sets the number of iterations. Typically, well, it defaults with just one, so let's just try it with one and see what that does. So that unfolds. That actually did a pretty good job. All right, so that unfolded our UVs. And you can see right off the bat that that's much cleaner and much quicker than what we had before. If we went in and we look at that here, you can see real quick, just doing that unfold, that helped us out quite a bit. This looks a lot cleaner than what we had before, doesn't it? All right. So simply by using with that unfold tool, it really helped us out. Although we still have some issues right here. And again, this gets into the fact that we have this seam, like I said, that we haven't fixed the seam problem. The seam problem is still going right down the middle here, and it's on the outside. And so how can we fix that? Well, if I go in and we go in and say, okay, where is that seam? Well, it's right here. The seam is on the outside. We go right here, there's the seam, and that's it. Yeah, see, the seam is going right down the middle on the outside, because here's our seam. So what we really would like to do is take these right here that are on the inside, and I want to put the seam right there and split that. Well, what does that mean? Well, I really want to go and split this right down the middle and do a move and sew. So let's go ahead, and that's what we want to do. So here's where we would like the seam to be, right on this inside. That means that these dots need to be on the edges. That's where seam is, out here on these edges. So I need to split this right down the middle. So let's go in, turn this off, and we'll get, one thing I want to do right off the bat is, this guy here is kind of hanging out, and he really uniformly, if I go in and we look at edges, if I pick this edge, that edge there is that edge there, I really want to take this and move this over there. So let's take our knife tool and we will cut that, all right? And then go in and select this edge and shift select that edge. So those two edges are there, so let's do a polygon move and sew. Boom, that puts that over there. So now you can see these look fairly uniform. All right, so let's get our knife tool and we cut this, and I want to cut that, and then I want to cut right down this seam. So I'm cutting right down the middle here, because this is where we want to put our seam. And let me zoom in. I want to cut that. Right. And I want to cut that. Okay. So that's where we want to put the seam, and we want to join these sides together. So let's go in here and get rid of my knife tool. I'll go into edge mode select, and I'm going to select these edges up here, which are these edges over here, right? And I don't think I want that edge and that edge. Maybe I do. Let's see here. Yeah, I do. I want that, and I want that, and those. So now let's go in, and we'll do our move and sew again. Boom. We move and sew that. All right. this up here. Okay, now I've got the seam is on the inside, right? So if I go up and I select UVs and I select these up here, there's my seam. My seam is now on the inside. That's what I wanted to achieve. Okay, we go over here and look at things. This is fairly distorted, I know, and so we're going to clean that up next. So we go into that. Let's see. Turn this off. So what we want to do now is we essentially want to relax all this. So let's go in UV mode, select all of this, go up to our polygons, optimize. And we want to use the unfold tool that's in Maya. And I'm going to do 10 iterations on that. And the rest of the default settings I'll leave the same. And let's go ahead and apply that. And let's see that. And right off the bat, that I can tell that that looks pretty good. We've got a couple of edge problems. Let's see that. That edge right there and that edge right there. So let's click that edge and click that edge and that edge and that edge. And we'll go into polygons and we'll do a move and so. That closes those. And UVs. Let's go in there. Let's optimize that again. And now we have a nice smooth mapping for that. Things look to be pretty good all the way around. Let me deselect that. Yeah, go back over here into object mode. And zoom this in. And now let's put our checkerboard on there. And lo and behold, this is looking quite good. All right. We've got nice uniform checkerboards there. We go down the side of this. Let me hide this. So we go down. And I need that open. Okay. So we slide down this. We've got a uniform size on our checkerboard. Very little distortion. Very little distortion, actually. This looks actually quite good. We've got a smooth flow of our rectangles all the way around, even going around these corners. All right. And if we call this back up, and remember we talked about our distortion view, so we can go in here and look at our distortion view and look at that. Excuse me, we have very nice uniform color all across this, which is telling me I've got very low, if no distortion whatsoever. And so in a very short period of time, using our cut tool, using our move and sew tool, using our unfold tool, and using the optimize tool, we were able to take a cylindrical mapping that was on this tube that's a fairly complicated shape. And in so doing, we generated an excellent UV mapping for that. And that ended up working quite well for us. So I hope this will help you out. You can see in the way that you would finish this off, obviously, is you go in and get our outliner up here, and you would select the rest of these chambers, and you would go in for this object, and you'd make selections that would make sense in terms of projections. So we did a cylindrical projection for this tube, another cylindrical projection for this one, a cylindrical projection for this tube. You might do a cylindrical projection for this whole nozzle end here. Okay, you do another cylindrical projection for this part of it down here. the bottom trigger guard here, probably another cylindrical projection that wrapped around the handle, and then another cylindrical projection that wrapped around this back end, and then another one for this pipe in the back. So you'd need to break this into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 9 different selection sets to map this out properly and get the right kind of mapping. But once you did that, okay, you'd get a fairly decent projection. I've actually done that, and we hit save here, and we call up the ray gun base with UVs. You can see I've gone through and done this, and I've got a UV mapping for this whole gun. And this could be tweaked a little bit better. You know, my front boxes are not quite the same size as my side boxes, but in general, I've got a fairly respectable UV mapping. I chose on purpose to do a cylindrical mapping on the cylinder, and rather than take the cylinder and cut it down the middle and peel it open, I chose to do a UV mapping so I have one wrap going around the cylinder and then a planar projection on both the end caps. That may not be the most ideal depending upon what you're trying to do. It really depends on what you're looking for. If you were looking to maybe do a brushed aluminum back end and have a circular kind of brushing that just was on the back end, and then on the flat part have it be painted, then my choice for doing the UV mapping with the planar projections and the cylindrical in the center for the cylinder actually would probably be the right way to do it, and arguably maybe even the best way to do that. So anyway, this has been Phil with PhilFX, and hopefully this will help you out with your UV mapping. Catch you later and have a good day.